Right.
Okie dokie. So I'll just make my screen bigger here. So
Yes, you're going to share with me your near-death experience and,
yeah,
short
um,
version for today.
of
Keep
course,
me,
of course.
hooked and want to go buy your book and, engage with the process fully. So,
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was I didn't know about life. I didn't know about any guidance, any wisdom. I didn't have any influence. So I had two families that were divorced. I come from a divorced family at 1 years old. And
wow.
each family's household was also a broken family. So I watched my dad abuse women and I watched my mom abuse men. So I've had
Mm,
men and women. Yeah. So life started off like that, like karmas, cycles, and patterns, and like ups and downs, and no direction. I had no influence what was right from wrong. The only messaging I had in my mind was a destructive mindset, because if my mom's side was destructive, I didn't have my dad's side to have another perspective. So both perspectives of mine were very damaging and traumatizing. So through life, I just kind of coasted like that with a defeat mindset and toxicity and negativity and abuse and jealousy and insecurity. My whole life, I just didn't have faith or trust, but something inside of me was always there. I always knew something. I would have these talks, or I'd speak to some, well, source. I would always speak to source, but I didn't know it was God. I didn't know it was source at that time. I didn't know that that was me, my spirit. I would just have these compellings, right? Long story short, years go by and I'm just living this life of negativity and toxicity. So I'm just drinking and doing drugs and hanging out with girls and trying to have sex, and just no leadership skills, no guy, no influence. Years go by. I'm skipping my whole life story. Like I have different segments in my life stories that can we can talk about for 2 hours at a time. Just different sections of my life story: being homeless, moving to over 100 homes, going to 9 different schools, um, just uh, just so many different things, right? But let's get to the fun part. So I was 23 years old, and with all of this negativity in me, still as an adult, 23, um, I ended up partying at someone's house, drinking, doing drugs, pharmaceuticals, and deciding to take off and go drive to some other people's house, find another girl's house. I was just this type of guy at that time, just, didn't think of consequences ahead of time. And as I was driving, everything had kicked in. And I felt my spirit intentionally knew, because inside of myself, I said, I don't care, whatever, so be it. So I pushed harder on the gas, and I'm driving so fast that lights are just going past me. And that's how fast I was going. And I ended up sideswiping a vehicle, and then instead of pressing on the brakes, I pushed all the way down on the gas,
wow.
100 kilometers an hour, right into a house. So I hit a corner of a house, the foundation of a house, so the corner of the house, and I ejected headfirst my entire body out of the vehicle, and I was dead. I died, and I was unconscious but aware. But that awareness, I didn't know what it was. I said, am I in my body right now? Right? Am I dead and breathing and conscious? Or what's that awareness? So at first, when I first hit the house, my body was there. I was conscious to my awareness. And as the ambulance came and things happened, I didn't have it in me to be in my body. And that's when I detached from my body and I was able to witness everything. So I was able to witness like following the ambulance, going back into the ambulance, watching them try to resuscitate me and put everything on me and trying to help me survive. They just kept saying he's losing too much blood and they're speeding to the hospital. And I'm just watching this from another perspective, not from in my body, but from outside myself, looking in. So I followed them to the hospital and I can see them take me on the gurney, taking me to surgery and then making phone calls and then one person showing up and then my mom shows up calling other family members and I'm like, am I in my body observing this? And then I separated from my body and I witnessed phone calls and I was able to go and tap into whispers and thoughts and feelings and emotions. So I started to tap into this ability where I would be able to listen into phone calls and I wanted to test it. So I was able to go to other sections in the hospital and listen into family or what everyone was saying. And I'm like, so this is not really me in my body. This is what's going on. So I started to come to a comprehension of what I ultimately was. And long story short, my mom had to make a decision to unplug me, right? Because my spirit was able to come in and out when I was going in for surgeries. And when your body needs your spirit the most to survive, your soul needs to be connected. We need to have a consciousness to be alive. So I was in such bad shape that my spirit would come close to me to have that connection so I could survive each surgery. So my lung collapsed. I had brain damage, short-term memory loss, bleeding in my brain. I was paralyzed over 75% of my body. So I was a vegetable. But my mom had to make a decision because remember when I said my spirit could come into my body at will? I took off my own neck brace. I'm unconscious. I'm on life support. My spirit came into my body for me to have the power. And remember, I was paralyzed on half side of my body. I felt crushed like concrete. How was I able to take off my neck brace? I did that, the power of our spirit. So I took off my neck brace. My mom starts screaming, calling the doctors and the nurses. And that's when they said, okay, maybe he's responding. So the moment that she was deciding to unplug me, that's when I had this pull, this calling upon me to gravitationally pull me to somewhere, to a higher self. So I'm leaving almost unwillingly, but I had to surrender and be willing to do it. So I started leaving the hospital. I started leaving and watching everything, and I'm going up and I entered this funnel and it just starts to connect me and take me. And I'm observing this black hole tunnel and it starts going faster and faster, but all I can see is black behind me. And then I could see lights and I can see everything. And I'm going so fast and I finally enter a white light. And I see white light and I arrive. And right when that happened, I felt calm and peace and welcome and awareness and a trust. And I was welcome to enter. I didn't go walk around, but I was just present in the white light. And I seen and I felt angels and a big source. And they're bowing down humbly like students. And I'm graciously welcomed and I feel love and forgiveness and no judgment. But you know what the biggest judge is? It's not God, it's not angels, it's us, our spirit. We're the biggest judge of our life. So I ended up judging. I was given a life review. So I got to look back at my life review. And what I reviewed was the perspective of others, feelings, emotions, and circumstances and perspectives of how I was as a human being. And that opened up my eyes to understand how my son felt, my mom felt, the people and kind of friends, family, my decisions, the choices I made. And it was the hardest thing for me to accept and just be like, oh, okay, I'm here, I'm forgiven. Let me just leave that life and I'm in heaven now. Like I'm gonna go. Cool. I'm forgiven. I'm a student. I'm a source. I made a decision, a conscious decision to say, I'm not ready. I want to go back. Like I decided to go back, and God asked me, or my source asked me, because God is multiple dimensional consciousnesses. It's not like your experience is your experience, but we're all one, right? So it's like, that was my experience, right? So my source just said, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm sure. And the same way I came, I was welcome to go back, because I had to make an oath and a dedication to God, to source. But to myself, ultimately, to come back into a crippled body and in a broken brain, like how was I able to change? So I came back into my body, and that's when my mom unplugged me. Yeah. And then about 15 minutes later, I woke up and I was back to being that Malcolm, that negative, toxic, unforgiving person. So just because you die and you have this enlightenment moment, it doesn't mean you come back into this physical realm and you remember it all and you're changed. Not everybody has that. I didn't have that. Some people have it. They remember, they're like, oh my God, I love the world. I love everybody. But my lessons were coming back to face my demons, my karmas, my cycles, my patterns. So I ended up having to relive all the suffering that I had, and to go through it and understand how to rewire myself and change my karmas, cycles, and patterns through all the mistakes again, the drinking and driving again, the girls again, the decisions again, the mistakes, the forgiveness, the humbling, the inner child, the release techniques. I had to rediscover through mistakes and failures and lessons, but not repeating it again and again and again like I was before my accident. It was like, okay, well, I could die again. I could slap God in the face. No, like I survived. I made a choice. So, just in a quick nutshell, that's a bit of my near-death experience. I have a podcast. People invite me onto their platform. I have several interviews on my YouTube channel that you can watch the full version. But yeah, that's a little bit just to give you an understanding about what I do now and how I understand people,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's I wanted to I'm saying I'm sure you have material, but I just wanted to meet you first
Right.
before going into. I didn't want to bias anything and so forth. Just wanted to hear it from you
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
And this has been a treat, a real treat and a treasure that I'm going to treasure for reasons you will know eventually. And my own experience. And I have a book called that one, that the first book is called Lives of a Soul,
Oh,
a
wow.
metaphysical autobiography of your soul and mine.
Beautiful.
Now, the only way I can write your autobiography, now anyone can write someone's biography, but only you can write your autobiography. So if I'm writing your autobiography, right there's a hint that you and I are one kind of thing. So, coming from that perspective and going beyond, so you can see my genuine interest. I wrote about near death experiences in that book as well.
Wow.
And I had my own, the 24th of April this year, when I was crushed by a car. I was under a car that was five
Oh,
inches high.
oh,
And,
wow.
yeah, so I'm still suffering a lot of dislocated bones out of place, chest crushed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you can see what I'm talking about, that I need to hear from you.
I didn't get into self-healing. I healed my bones and I healed my lungs, and I heal things, by the way. and I teach people how to do it. Like I work with clients and stuff. But when I told the doctors and nurses that I'm fusing my bones together, they laughed at me. When I said I'm healing my lungs right now as we speak, they were like, what are you talking about? But I proved it, and I walked out of there in 6 days. They released me into Care West Rehabilitation Center, but my recovery was supposed to take months, but I left the hospital in 6 days. So like you, look at you.
We're going to have further discussions.
Yeah.
Today is about your role play,
Yeah.
and I do have another session at 4 p.m. my time. What time is it there for you?
Noon
Noon, right? So you're 2 hours. Where exactly you are?
in
In
Alberta,
California? Oh, you're
Airdrie.
in Alberta. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And today I'm in Toronto.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, I go back to Jamaica on Monday. I've been in doing my North American tour since July 22nd.
Oh, wow.
I go back to Jamaica, right? So, yes, that was another thing that I remember that I'm in your country
Mm,
at the time that I'm talking to you.
okay.
So, this is yes, absolutely beautiful. All right. So, let us then get into your session and then we'll pick up where we just concluded. I'm going to go ahead. Could you go ahead and end the recording? I don't know if it will work or it will still come back on, but just go ahead and end it and then restart.